How are you? Are you on form? Are you ready to entertain the world?
Absolutely not, but I'll give it a go.
I don't know what this is going to be tonight. We tried to record, well, we did record a Halloween special last night, didn't we? Which just kind of started off as just like a lethargic chat.
Yeah, well, I don't really know what to do with that, so... I don't like horror games because it means that I have to actually...
Get scared.
Yeah. Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah. Wakey, wakey, Firebolt. Wakey, wakey. Hands off, Snakey.
Fucking...
This is going to be fun. I'm just going to toy with your sanity. I almost said it.
What sanity?
Oh, this will be the last, hopefully, the last podcast I have to record half blind. Fed up with not being able to see properly. Looking forward to going and having holes burned in my ocular anatomy.
Then you'll just be metaphorically blind instead of both.
I think you're going to have to up your game. The insults are lacking in. Oh, fucking hell! How are we going to get into this? Come on, let's do something. Let's should we start? Should we start the podcast and then see if it
Now you need to get a bit of a swing going.
I didn't know you were a swinger.
This is gonna be awful. Great. Cool.
Whee! So I'm down, in my mind, I'm down at the park now with you and your sister, like about 4 and 5 years old, pushing you on the swings, going whee!
A time when everything wasn't on fire.
I don't know how old were you? That was just before would have been just before the big banking crash, wouldn't it? No, what was that? 2008, was it?
When I nearly died on a ride.
Yeah, you did, didn't you? That frog hopper thing, whatever it was called. Yeah.
I don't know how I'm not scared of those, like, and not like traumatized by that. Like,
you see news items about things like that, about little kids getting thrown off rides and that because they're
that could have been me.
Well, it nearly was you, wasn't it?
Could have been famous.
Yeah,
could have really made something of myself.
Mum was.
Admittedly, I splat on the floor, but it's still something.
Yeah. Yeah. Where was that? That was.
Butlins, I believe.
No, it wasn't actually at Butlins. It was a fun, like an amusement park nearby, near the Skegness one, I think. I think it was Skegness. And your seatbelt thing came out, didn't it? And Mum was holding on to you for dear life to try and stop you from getting thrown out of the carriage.
I would have let me go.
Let me go. Let me go.
Let's stop. I meant start, but maybe that's just a Freudian slip.
Okay. Right then.
Hello,
of course I'm going to interrupt you.
I don't know how I don't always expect it. Hello, Internet. I'm Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
You get your voice work auditioning.
No, but do you think I should?
I mean, honestly, your story voices that you read stuff to us in as
Do you know what
kids.
the biggest problem with that?
Could probably work quite well for an audiobook.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that was remembering which voice I'd used for which character. I swear, like, especially with Harry Potter, because there's so many different characters that I didn't know. I couldn't remember which one. And I swear, what's his name? Hagrid kind of turned into a bit of a West Country bumpkin at times.
We wouldn't notice.
Nah. Quite enjoyed that.
Your Winnie the Pooh voice and Dumbledore voice were the same, though. I found entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, but we weren't reading them at the same time. So, I mean, you've only got so many voices in your catalogue, you know.
Yeah. Very professional. Anyway, welcome to fucking Breaking Bollocks. We sometimes talk on here and say stuff.
Shout out to our potential new audience, although they're probably not listening. Aberdeen University Bridge Club.
Genuinely hope they're not.
We did some promo. We plugged them, didn't we?
You did.
Well, there was an icebreaker exercise where we had to show and tell something within arm's reach, and I thought it best to be kind of respectable about it. So I grabbed a microphone and explained why we'd bought them.
What would you grab that wasn't respectable?
What, within arm's length? Within arm's reach?
Oh. Really?
Use your imagination, honestly.
Well, I was going to show my Fuck Yeah video games book because it's got my name in it because I backed it, but I was like, I'm not really sure what kind of sense of humour they have yet, so I went with something a lot. We're going to
find out if any of them watch this, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's an example, a prime example of something that relates to the title of this week's episode, is Bridge. It's a fucking evil game.
Oh, I was like, what? You're cock.
It is. Yeah, that's definitely evil.
Yeah, news. What's happened recently?
I don't know, actually. What has happened?
I've been busy doing shit.
Oh, Wales is sort of putting up a barrier, aren't they? They're kind of stopping people coming from various areas in England.
Confusing Brexit saga has continued.
There's
been something about... It's probably from tabloids just moaning about, oh, the EU won't let us have this trade deal. And it's like, well, fucking went against international law. So, like, what are they supposed to do to react to that? Like, you had an agreement there.
Yeah.
And then I think that they're probably looking to abandon the actual deadline of the end of this year, which is hardly surprising, but
it's going to be
probably won't stop people voting for them, even though they apparently voted for him to get Brexit done, and he's gone, no, we don't like that deal. I don't know, fucking you figure it out. What do you want me to do about it?
What else is going on? I don't know what's going on in America at the moment. I know they've got elections coming up, but it all seems to merge into one now.
Elections are happening.
It's just all shit.
Yeah, when's this going out?
Thursday, the 22nd.
Our next episode will be after the election.
It will.
That'll be interesting. Although the actual results might not be fully in because they have the mail-in ballots.
Well, there's talk of if Trump doesn't win, there's talk of it being strung out for months contesting the result, isn't there?
Well, yeah, because Trump doesn't... Trump's not the sort of person that accepts losing at Monopoly, you know?
Do you think he had COVID at all?
I think so. I mean, he seemed high out of his mind on drugs.
Yeah, but do you think he had COVID at all?
Probably.
Well, maybe I can get it again. That somebody has got it a second time. Apparently, a lot worse as well. Oh, and the long COVID thing's apparently 4 different things now.
What?
Okay, so which bit are you saying what about? The person getting it the second time?
4 different things.
Yeah, long COVID.
What the fuck is long COVID?
It's the official kind of name for the long-term kind of the remaining symptoms that don't go away. Kind of when people are the fatigue is one of them. That people are still like fatigued after months and like breathlessness and stuff like that. But there's 4 different things.
I have
apparently.
COVID.
Yeah, there's 4 different things, and there was the guy that caught it for a second time, and it was a lot worse than the first time.
Well, yeah, because it would weaken things.
Well, yeah, but the first time he didn't actually show any symptoms really. It was, but who knows what's going to happen? It's just,
yeah, with that, it's sort of you would normally develop antibodies for that, but that's not going to happen in every case.
At least I'm going to be able to see though and get back to delivering pizzas, so we can live on pizzas again for a little while. Although I won't be
True
doing
student life.
Yeah.
I'm actually next theme in the course that I'm doing. It's sort of one's looking at sort of past of like evolutionary timeline, and one's looking at frontiers in biological sciences, so the future more. The next theme in the frontiers one is actually microbiology and disease, which I start this week.
Cool. You could save the human race.
And I could write a paper on it that nobody will read and the press will misrepresent.
You could, yeah. That's high lofty
I don't know.
hopes.
I'm not massively interested in microbiology. It's just sort of a pretty broad course, but
There'd be a lot to look at the moment, wouldn't there? I mean,
well,
a lot
yeah,
of relevant stuff.
I'm more interested in the moving things that I can see in front of me.
What did you think? I played you a bit of my my manifesto, didn't I? What did you think of that? My electronic music manifesto.
You sounded like a shit robot. The manifesto itself was fine. Like it's a bit pretentious, you know, but it's a bit wanky. But that's it kind of
modern electronic music for you.
It felt like what it should have been, but your voice just does not lend itself to whispering in like a meaningful way. You just sounded like a shit robot.
Marvin the paranoid android.
Yeah, you sounded like I've not listened to the radio show or watched the film, but you sounded like what I think that character should sound like.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, I had to record it in the middle of the night because I was like
self-conscious.
No, I was. It was the deadline, but yeah. So I kind of whispered the whole thing and then put it through a load of sound effects to disguise the fact that it was creepy as fuck and made it even more creepy. But anyway, so
I did quite like. I'm assuming for the lighting, you just like had a candle in front of your face.
Yeah.
That was quite a good effect. It looked kind of old-timey.
Well, yeah, but I mixed it with some overlay effects in Final Cut as well.
Yeah. We won't be showing this or anything on this, so you won't know what I'm talking about, but
no.
Because the Orbiter is a
camera. Although I could use a screenshot from it as the thumbnail.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty evil.
Yeah, I might do that then, because they're not going to get to see the video because it's unlisted. I'm not putting it up.
Really? Do you have that much integrity?
What?
Not to put out a video like that?
What? That implies integrity that I wouldn't put it out.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Well, because if I put it out, it would ruin my kind of reputation among the podcasting and YouTube communities.
Well, that's my point, that you don't really have one, so what's there to lose?
I'm not as self-confident as you think I am. This is all an act.
Yeah, I know that, but like, whatever. Fucking, it's better than like 90% of what we put on here.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. Thank you very much.
Well, of your contributions on here.
Yeah, but let's face it, nobody's gonna like fail me on a degree course for doing shit podcasts, are they? Although actually, towards the end of this particular course, I've got to do a podcast as part of the course with 3 or 4 of the others, just talking about our projects and stuff.
Yeah, groups work's proven quite strange. I'm not sure how much of it's like just people not being as online as me, or if I'm doing most of the work, but whatever.
Getting back to the news, I got to say, it's intensely political, isn't it? This whole kind of tiered system of lockdowns in England.
Yeah, I've not really been following that because it seems a bit.
Well, first
confusing.
when tier 3 is the highest tier, and Liverpool were the first to kind of go into that because they had the largest sort of outbreak, if you like. But then they were trying to get Greater Manchester into it as well. Westminster were trying to persuade Greater Manchester to agree to going into the highest tier, but Greater Manchester are kind of resisting because their point being, I mean, it's not that they don't have sufficient numbers to warrant it. It's just that their argument is that the financial support mechanisms aren't in place to kind of help, to give enough help to people that are going to suffer the economic consequences. So it's been a bit of a standoff between Westminster and the mayor of the council in Greater Manchester, but
especially considering a lot of Tory constituencies have had similar numbers aren't doing anything near as severe.
No, this is the thing though. Greater Manchester has a Labour councillor as head of the council there, but Lancashire in general have agreed to go up to the highest tier, and they have a Conservative in charge. So it's like, it's just who knows. And Wales have just said, "Well, fuck you, we're not letting anyone in."
We just sort of the 4 sort of nations feel very different. Especially right now.
You see, so they're talking about this tier 3 thing, and it's like, well, we've got a lot of that in place already up here. It's like we don't really.
Yeah, and
visiting other households isn't an option in Scotland at all.
Well, it's not supposed to be, but there are definitely people who are following that exactly.
Yeah, but in general, we're not that far removed from the tier 3 restrictions.
Yeah.
Anyway. Some businesses are different, but
I've been going in a couple of times for on-campus practicals. I've been surprised the amount of people I've seen not wearing masks, at least outside.
Yeah, people don't tend to outside, but
it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, it's gonna spread, even though like there's a bit of dispersal, like. Well, and it's not going to stay on surfaces as much.
It's not going to be outside, but they are heightening restrictions from Monday across Scotland in terms of all workplaces have to have masks while indoors, which I kind of thought was... Well, I would say I kind of thought was...
I don't really know why you'd be going into a workplace unless there was... interacting with other people, unless you had equipment there that you needed.
Until my eyes went a bit funny, and now that they're being fixed, I'll be going back in. But I was in a workplace, wasn't I? And I will be again.
Well, that's because of in unspecified takeaway company, you need the cooking equipment, don't you? And you'd be picking up the round food items from said place where they produce the...
Yeah, items. But... I mean, it's been a few weeks since I've been in there because it's been too dark for me to drive safely. But at that point, there was social distancing measures in place, but we didn't have to wear masks in the the building, in the shop, if you like. Although it changed from week to week, it depended. I mean, when the Aberdeen breakout happened a few weeks back, they did tighten even though we're like, you know, a good 20 miles outside of Aberdeen, they did tighten the rules. So yeah, I mean the one that I'm keeping an eye on is that I think from Monday they're talking about all indoor situations having masks, including gyms. Now, I've been back at the gym for a few weeks, and I know the gym that your older sister goes to. She said they have to wear a mask when moving between stations of equipment, like machinery that they're working on at the gym, which is not the case at Inch, but that's because it's a very small gym and there's only 2 people allowed in at a time and you book in advance. But I think if it was a case that you had to wear a mask while you were exercising, I'm not sure I would be wanting to go because...
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, like, dangerously drop your oxygen intake or anything, but it makes it a bit more difficult to breathe.
Well,
especially
the thing is, when I'm on the rowing machine and the treadmill, obviously you sweat a lot. And if that starts running into your mask, you're going to end up waterboarding yourself.
I doubt you produce that much sweat, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Well, I mean, it's dripping down my face when I'm on the treadmill and on the rowing machine. And if that starts soaking into obviously with a mask on, it would make it worse because you're going to be, obviously, you kind of got saliva coming out your mouth. And
what are you doing when you're rowing?
Working hard. I row 2 kilometers in 9.5 minutes at the moment. Not very much.
I don't know how to... Is that impressive?
That. I don't know, because I've never compared it with anyone else, but I'm knackered by the end of it, so it's impressive to me.
Okay. I mean, it's more exercise than I've ever done in the last 5 years.
And I run over 2 miles every time I go as well. I'm still overweight, though. Maybe this beer has something to do with it. Well, not specifically this one. We're not really talking about evil, are we?
No, we always do a bit of news before the sort of lockdown.
I can't believe it's only been going for like 22 minutes. I feel like we're running out of stuff.
Do you feel like you're trapped in an elevator doing small talk?
That would be good, wouldn't it? We could do a podcast in an elevator.
No.
Right up and down. You get lots of different guests because people would be getting in and out. Although not during...
Every single one that hated being there. Like, nobody enjoys talking in an elevator. Nobody does it, really. Unless you're in the north.
There are lifts anywhere, unless you're American.
Well, yeah, but
which 3/4 of our audience are. So.
Internationalization.
So, what else has been happening in the news then? Anything? Somebody died.
Quite a few people have died. You might notice
Who
that
died?
the global pandemic there have been quite a few deaths.
I can't remember. It's just like since
Van
20.
Halen.
Yeah, that was a few. Yeah, that was last week, wasn't it? Do you think he jumped when it happened?
Really? No.
Sorry, I just got that. I didn't mean it to sound like that. I meant like it was a surprise, so he kind of jumped from being startled rather than do you think he jumped off a building?
Yeah. Did you? Well...
I've got an itchy back. Oh my God. It's turning into a fest.
Right.
Sanity. Sanity.
What the fuck are you talking?
I don't know.
Repeating the word sanity won't make you sound any saner.
No, it's not intended to. Can we have a conversation about something?
Sure. I mean, that's what a podcast is supposed to be.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? A bit more interesting than this. I don't know. It's kind of. I'm not sure what our best material is. I don't know whether just like talking nonsense is it more entertaining to talk nonsense, or do we get I don't know. Do you think nobody ever tells us? The only person we get any feedback off of is Craig.
Yeah, and I mean, not to knock you, Craig, but
you're gonna go. And
you're not exactly representative of the typical listener. I don't think you're not a very typical person. Putting it diplomatically.
Phil person. Okay. I've got to see on Monday. I've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get on a train and then get on a megabus. I've got to go into the Central Belt where it is apparently
the wasteland.
There's higher incidences. I've got to be careful. I could bring it back. I'm going to take hand sanitizer and
bring Glasgow back.
Yeah, that'd be a bummer, wouldn't it?
I mean,
imagine I get my eyesight back, so I can actually go out and work and drive and stuff, and then I'd have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. It'd be like, and possibly die. I suppose that would be a slightly worse outcome. And don't smile as though it wouldn't be a worse outcome for you.
I wasn't really listening to what you were saying.
In other news, I bought an Xbox, didn't I?
Yeah, because you're impulsive.
No, it's not. I've been wanting to buy one. Well, since Mum gave away our old Wii U, which, to be fair, didn't get any use, really. Well, we occasionally played Mario Kart, didn't we? I do miss that, but... But yeah, so if anybody, I don't have any friends. It's like I put in that that these platforms where you link to your social accounts and it suggests friends that are on the same thing, and you can kind of, I linked it to my Facebook friends list, and nobody on my friends list is on Xbox Live.
The irony is, most of my friends that I couldn't play games with on PlayStation have Xboxes, but I'm not really friends with them anymore because I have no reason to be.
Anyway, do we do any more news?
Is there any more news to talk about?
Everything's just locking down gradually more, isn't it? And things are going to get shitter and shitter. Circuit break. Do you think there'll be a circuit break? I think there needs to be. I don't know. We need one up here. I think there might be at some point, but they're already looking forward to see what Christmas is going to be like, doesn't it? I mean, the more locked down things are at Christmas, the more money I'll make because people will be ordering lots of pizzas. Kind of.
I mean, with relation to like locking down at Christmas, I know a lot of people aren't keen, but like, if it needs to be done, like.
Oh Jesus!
The fact that it's just a popular Christian holiday shouldn't be prioritized, especially when
I don't think
they shut down during Eid.
For me, it's not really that much of an issue that it's a religious holiday, but the fact that normally Christmas is fucking mental in the shops for like a whole month, and like especially the week before Christmas, it's just chaos. I mean, can you imagine Tesco, like. When the pandemic's like rife.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Queuing in the car park. We'd be fucking frozen here.
When we went down south, going to, I think it was Aldi. It was either Aldi or it was one. No, it was really crowded, and I didn't really know why because Scottish shops almost never get that crowded.
Yeah, that day we went to Asda where we had food, and then we went to Aldi as well. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is like, it's a bit like the same thing. I mean, I kind of, when we drive down, I kind of get gradually reacclimatized because I'm driving. You just see the traffic get thicker and thicker and thicker as the further you travel south. So, but yeah, generally there's just more people and more stress and.
Yeah, but like we spent about an hour once trying to get out of a car park on the M25.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes, it literally wasn't over an hour, wasn't it? Getting out of that. Where was that? South Mims, I think. Yeah.
It sounds like a made-up place.
South Mims. That was where we bought the. What were they? What did I have a Twix pretzel? I think I had a Twix pretzel. We had pretzels there. I think you might have had a hot dog pretzel.
I can't remember because I don't care.
Fine.
Right.
Shoot me down.
Do you have any more news-related items?
What, other than the fact that we once queued in a car park after we'd eaten
It's just fucking
pretzels?
boring. Right. Evil.
Yes, you are.
Do you have any discussion?
What
points?
is it?
What is evil? Do you think there is such a thing as an evil person?
Well, I don't know, because this is the thing I was thinking about with this subject was the word is bandied around a lot, but there are people who are infamous for kind of known as, I mean, like paedophiles, Hitler, people, you know what I mean? People that are kind of widely regarded by society as being evil. Are they, do they think they're evil? I mean...
Well, it depends, because...
did Hitler think he was wrong? It's a bit like that Thanos thing, isn't it?
With, like, paedophiles, like, most of the time we think of people that have actually, like, acted upon those urges, but there's probably a fair amount of people that have that and know that that's wrong, and so get help.
I think in that particular case as well, there's lots of different... That's a blanket term that kind of incites an emotive response, and there'll be lots of variation within that. You know, there'll be people that really do like set out to hurt kids, but others that kind of just have a twisted... I mean, they actually love them, but they kind of... It's a twisted kind of...
Well, yeah, it's the point with that they're not able to have... they're not able to make those decisions. So,
but there are, as with any kind of violent criminals, there are among them people who set out to hurt people and get pleasure from that. Do they think do they know or think that they are in the wrong? Because to take it back to
some probably, it'll depend on it.
The thing is, for me, I'm not religious, but I think the metaphor of the Garden of Eden is a very interesting way of looking at it, because the whole idea of eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is often misquoted as being that the act itself of eating the forbidden fruit was evil, but it's not that. The story actually refers to the idea of becoming aware of, like, defining good and evil. It's knowledge of good and evil. It's not evil itself, it's knowledge of it. So until there's a definition of what is good and what is evil, the implication is that we live in some kind of paradise if there's no such thing as good and evil, or if the two aren't differentiated. For me, I think of things in terms of actions and consequences. But it is a difficult one. As I say, I know it's fiction, but that Thanos thing, it's like... and this whole situation that's going on now with COVID, you know, it's like we as a species, we're referred to as a virus in the Matrix, aren't we? You know, we are bad for this planet.
Well, with that sort of idea, I mean, yeah, I would say humans have been bad for the planet, obviously, but
so if somebody had
that's not
virus,
like innate, and not every person is equally doing that.
No.
Like, it's the systems in place that we live under that are doing that. It's not something that like everyone really gets a choice in.
I suppose what I'm trying to get at is the essence of your question is, do people who are regarded by the vast majority of society as evil think of themselves as evil? Do they apply that label to themselves? Or do they think that everybody else is wrong about them and that they're misunderstood?
I mean, there'll be certain words that aren't evil themselves, but are typically have that sort of connotation of being like the absolute worst, just awful. Sort of like a word like racist, or which most people who are racist would reject being put on them, but then there are a subset that have heard it so many times to refer to them and don't have a problem with what that's saying about them, so they just accept that term.
Yeah. I'm thinking back, because I was trying to think, I mean, everybody, I would think, most people who get to my age have not necessarily regrets, but actions in their past which they look back on and recognise that they were, that they've learned from mistakes. And I'm looking back to try and think of, there's plenty of things that I've done that have been naive or just plain stupid and not thinking about the consequences. But I'm trying to think back to a time when I may have done. I mean, I'm going to be as honest and open as I can without. I don't want to kind of incriminate myself, but there are things that I have done in the past which I would now label as, well, I don't know. Other people might label as evil, but because I've been on the side of the perpetrator, if you like, because I've been the one doing that thing, and I didn't feel, well, that's the thing. I'm trying to think about what the feeling was. I mean, there's a couple of examples I could bring up, but the one that really sticks out to me is that when I was about 6 or 7, and I don't know, something that might have come up on previous podcasts a while ago, but I came from like a broken family, but my dad was quite violent. He at the time, it was back in the 70s. He was eventually diagnosed with
bipolar.
Well, I think it would be bipolar now. Yeah, manic depressive. Yeah. But back then, it just wasn't a diagnosed thing.
Yeah.
And being brought up in that environment, I think, had an effect on me as a child. But I do remember at that age, I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but I do remember the feeling of, there was a kid in our year called Howard, and we used to call him Howardy Cowardy Custard. And he was that kid that gets picked on. He had like a really geeky coat and really thick glasses that were always dirty, and he used to I think he possibly had some kind of mental condition that would be diagnosable now, but at that time never was. But I remember getting a thrill, like actually getting a kick out of running up to him with my friends, and like this was a planned thing that I was kind of the ringleader at the time as well. I used to kind of, and it's weird because I remember getting bullied by other people at that time. This was the law of the playground sort of thing. But waiting until the dinner ladies were looking the other way, running up to this kid, and you could see him. He would bite his hand. He would put his hand in his mouth and bite it and dribble out the corner of his mouth because he was so anxious because he knew what was going to happen. And basically just kick him repeatedly in the shins as hard as I could. And then we would run away, and he would go to the dinner ladies, and we were like long gone by that point, and we would just deny everything about it. Now, it's really horrible for me to think about that looking back, because I don't know what happened to him. I would love to be able to apologize to him, but at the end of the day, that could have had deep, profound impacts on that kid's life. And in similar ways, things happened to me that had deep, profound impacts on my life. So it's really difficult coming to terms with that. But that's the reason I'm bringing it up, is because that feeling, that kick that I got out of it, and that buzz, that pleasure that I got out of it at that time, is probably the nearest thing I can think to actually doing something I knew to be wrong and feeling something from something that I knew. I don't know if I knew it was evil. I was too young to know. Or
thrill, or do you mean like feeling guilt afterwards?
I wasn't even thinking about that. It was, I suppose, you've got to bear in mind what age and what stage of development you were at the time and what you were going through at the time. You know, I didn't know any better. I suppose I was. That it's weird remembering being in that sort of stage of youth.
Yeah,
and I get a similar thing looking at some of the ways that I acted as a first time round when I was at college, you know, which is weird because looking at the way that how responsible you are, I think, like, you know, you say it's amazing that you're still here sometimes, and it's like, well, you know, some of the things I've done, I don't know how you guys turned out as responsible as you did. It's like,
I mean,
or are doing.
They say mistakes are the best teacher, and the mistakes you've made are having the same effect without us actually having to do them ourselves.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Oh, I did it all for you.
I don't think any of us have, in any serious way, done drugs or anything, but we kind of know not to, even though you could probably teach us how to.
I mean, I would never tell you not to.
Well, that's the thing. It's the difference. Like, it's not that you don't tell us not to, it's just we know the consequences. It's not just doing that because the rules say no. It's doing that because we know there's a reason why you probably shouldn't.
But that doesn't stop you drinking at times to the extent where you throw up.
Yeah, that's not really knowing my own limits. But
yeah, but I mean, there's a similar thing with whether or not it's legal is a different issue to whether or not it's good or bad for you. It's about use and misuse, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, for instance, if marijuana ever became legalized, which I hope it does at some point, I certainly wouldn't think twice about sharing a brownie with you or something. You know, it's like,
yeah, I mean,
it's the smoking part of it that would would freak me.
I just don't really get smoking. Like, if you're not already addicted to it, I don't get why I want to start that.
No.
Without like people.
I
never really got pressured into drugs, which I was a bit disappointed by, because I got getting that, oh, your friends might offer you drugs, don't take them.
Well, that's the weird thing, actually.
Literally, one person offered me drugs once, and I'm pretty sure it was a joke.
I remember when I was in my teens, having friends who smoked and really, really wanting to try it, because my granddad, who I respected greatly, he was kind of a surrogate dad, really. But he smoked most of his life. Ended up dying from emphysema and eventually lung cancer. But in his 80s, so he had a good innings but it's a shit life for the last 10 years. Anyway, but I really wanted to, and my friends who smoked were adamant. They were like, just don't do it. Don't try it. You know, we don't want to get you hooked. Because, I mean, obviously they knew that it had a hold over them and they didn't want to see that happen to someone else, you know. But it did anyway. But actually, this is the longest I've gone without smoking in my life. Which is good. I say without smoking, without any nicotine intake. So that's... See, that evil? Is making money from selling poison evil? When there's that saying that the love of money is the root of all evil, isn't there?
Well, yeah, that's the sort of point of a lot of people only really do that because they need money, and selling drugs makes a lot of money.
Yeah. But if that's true, that saying about the love of money being the root of all evil, I mean, that comes from a religious book. But a lot of people kind of repeat that, sometimes incorrectly. But that would imply, if that were the case, that our entire society is based on the root of all evil.
There is some wisdom in the Bible. And it's just a lot of other bullshit as well.
It's deliberately misinterpreted a lot of the time.
Well, there's that, but then there's just some weird stuff that only probably makes sense if you were hallucinating in the desert 2,000 years ago.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Like not eating shellfish for some reason and not mixing fabrics.
Not mixing fabrics?
Yeah, something about not mixing two different materials in clothing, which means that like 90% of our clothes are condemned by the Bible.
It's got to be all Old Testament bullshit, though, isn't it? Although
Not all of it.
I don't know.
A lot of it has been mistranslated as well, which
Yeah.
isn't helpful.
Well, that's the thing. When you move in between different languages, sometimes there isn't actually a literal translation for some words.
That pretty famous bit in Leviticus, I think it is, that is supposed to condemn homosexuality. It talks about a man laying with another man, but in the actual original Hebrew, I think, it was a man laying with a younger man, but it's not really in a way that a translation would work, where a younger man probably meant like a boy. Well, a young boy.
But this is something that blows my mind a little bit, actually, because, that idea of translation sometimes not being possible in a literal sense between languages because some things don't have an equivalent meaning in another language. Language is almost like it's the vessel of meaning for a society, isn't it? It's everything that you can express or think in terms of is kind of limited by your vocabulary and your linguistic kind of library. So if a concept isn't expressible in language, does that mean that in that society that concept cannot exist?
Well, there's that. It's probably a bit misrepresented, like many factoids, but the thing about like Inuit languages having so many words for snow.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that about like
there's a similar thing with
specifically
Sanskrit.
British dialect.
Sanskrit has a ridiculous...
so many different terms for rain.
Yeah, Sanskrit has a ridiculous number of words for love as well. That the nuances that we can't... And I think that's the essence of... you haven't read 1984, have you? But there's a concept in that about basically... there's a ministry that works to reduce. It's almost like an economy of words. They basically to reduce the vocabulary of the proletariat as much as possible because it limits their capacity to understand beyond the concepts of the vocabulary. So that whole kind of dumbing down of society is essentially a way to try to control the human race. That's evil.
But how many people in that, how many cogs, I guess, in that system are aware of the wider implications of what they're doing?
Well, that I think that kind of highlights there's something important there. You said cogs. Cogs are part of a machine, aren't they?
Well, yeah, like think of a landlord. I'm generally not fans of them because they exploit a basic need for their own profit. People need a place to live. Although they can choose another landlord, they'll have to pay someone unless they can buy their own house, which nobody can do nowadays because rent's too high, people don't make enough money.
Yeah.
All those things, fun things.
Yeah.
So, although an individual landlord renting out property they bought might not be the worst thing, because in a functioning system, someone could just choose to live somewhere else. They don't have to pay this person. It would be more like a hotel, really.
Yeah.
But in a system where everyone's having to rent, and to get a decent wage, you have to live in a city where the rent is extraordinarily high. It's sort of, you're a part of that problem, but you're not the whole thing.
But then the idea of actually buying and owning property is kind of underpinned by the mortgage system, which is controlled by the banks in our capitalist society. I mean, there is...
Even taking it down a notch to the actual consumer buying stuff there, like if you buy coffee from farms in Kenya that probably don't have the best conditions, even if they're getting a fair price.
Yeah.
Or your phone's probably constructed using metal mined under, again, pretty dodgy conditions.
I feel like we are narrowing it right down and coming down to, I feel like we kind of solved this one already.
Wow.
That it is the love of money.
Well, that's a part of it,
it's
but it's
root,
sort of the intent.
That idea of it being the root of all evil, it's not evil itself then. If that definition stands.
Like, we're aware of the problems of this system.
Yeah.
But we still participate in it as much as anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, we buy stuff of Amazon, even though we know their workers are treated like shit.
That makes a distinct point, I think, is that what we were talking about earlier about whether or not you can define a person as evil, or if they think of themselves as evil, that's possibly misapplying an adjective instead of, or using evil as an adjective to describe a person, whereas in actual fact it's a noun, it's an abstract concept which is the byproduct of something else. In terms of, you can be a good person but be responsible for evil things happening because of the situation that you find yourself in.
But like with money and even language to an extent, it's these things that are sort of I don't know if you've heard of this before, Tinkerbell concepts. Things that only really work if everyone believes it.
Something wrong with me. See, when you said that, I just thought, oh, Tinkerbell's cute. And now I'm thinking of Kylie Minogue in Moulin Rouge.
What?
Absinthe.
Yeah, that doesn't make any more sense.
You've seen Moulin Rouge?
A while ago, I wasn't really paying attention to that
It's
stuff.
a fucking excellent film. It's really, really well worth a watch. Brilliant. Good music and everything.
I cried during it.
You did?
Remember that.
Yeah,
There's
every
a
time,
really sad song in it.
do you know, every time I watch that film, like, you know, from time to time people say, what's your favourite film of all time? And I always find it really difficult to answer that because I was really into Back to the Future trilogy, and there's so many good films out there that are kind of...
Yeah,
but
that is sort of
whenever I rewatch Moulin Rouge, I think, I always forget that this is my favourite film of all time. And it's probably because it has kind of relevant connections with me as well, because it was the first date that I had with Mum.
Well,
so
in my case, that
it came out of
the
the blue.
Lego Batman movie, so probably not good to go based on that.
But it was it was out of the blue as well. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was just kind of going into this film with Mum. It was just a date where we chose a film to go to, and we said, yeah, let's go see that. And I didn't even know it was a musical. But as soon as it started, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I think just everything about it just blew me away. So that went down a sidetrack. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, Tinkerbell.
Do you think you're a good person?
I hope so. I like to think so. I'm trying to think whether or not I've ever done anything which was deliberately evil with it. I mean, even that thing that, back when I was 6 or 7, when we used to bully that kid, I couldn't hold myself fully responsible for that because I know, looking back, what all the circumstances surrounding it were, and I would never... I think when you judge yourself, you should always try to apply the same logic that you would as if you were judging someone else in that position, because people are very cruel to themselves. They don't give themselves nearly as much of a break as other people, I think. And if I saw a kid of that age in those life circumstances, I would understand their behaviour, even though I wouldn't. I needed help and I wasn't getting it.
Interesting. It's sort of kind of an inversion of that whole.
I hope so.
I forget the line. The thing about not throwing stones at glass houses.
Yeah, don't throw stones. People who live in glass houses shouldn't.
Don't be the first to cast stones. Whatever that thing. It's sort of the opposite there of what you were saying.
There's another one. And this is a religious one concept about before you criticize or before you point out the splinter in someone else's eye, you should think about something to do with the log in your own. Like, basically, that whole concept that it's easy to point a finger at other people, but you've got to think about your own failings first. I mean,
but see, you're going with that like, oh, I'm thinking about my own failings all the time. Let's do this as if I was looking at another person.
I think that's a good rule of thumb, though, in general, is that when you criticize yourself, when you find yourself criticizing your own actions and choices, a good testing stick, I don't know what that means, but a good way of trying to work out whether you're being fair to yourself is to try to look at yourself from someone else's point of view, or try to think of yourself as someone else, and how would you advise that person? How would you, if they came to you saying, I've done this, I've done that, how would you speak to them? Because people, like I say, people are very cruel to themselves, I think. But I want to go back to, because you, especially the way you asked it, when you asked me, do I think I'm a good person? What? I think I'm a person. I think I'm capable of good and bad. And I think everyone is.
But like on the whole,
I tried my best to do. So I think everybody has a conscious side where they try to be in control of their actions and do what they think is right, or what is going to result in the least negative consequences. But there must come a point when society is breaking down.
Would you say that you go by generally quite utilitarian philosophy then?
Meaning that I consider the value of my actions in terms of their consequences rather than living by a particular code?
I'm not sure that would exactly be what utilitarianism is, but roughly, yeah, sort of the sum good done by action versus the some bad, and doing the thing that makes the most some good stuff happen.
Like a balance sheet.
Yeah, it's a very mechanical way to look at things.
But it's kind of the way you do. I mean, in terms of, I know that drinking alcohol isn't good for you. But you've got to look at the pros and cons of it. Sometimes you need to kick back a bit. Sometimes you need to take a chill and time out. Sometimes, I mean, it's not necessarily right, but sometimes you need a bit of help to shake loose a bit.
That's interesting, because in terms of how I weigh up my actions, I don't tend to view them on how they actually affect me so much as others. Drinking alcohol, I don't really think of the health concern. I think, am I going to be an asshole to everyone?
That is interesting, because one of the things that I've, for a long time, one of the tenets that I've held, and this is something that I've kind of formulated for myself, is that people talk about selflessness and selfishness.
I mean, selflessness makes it sound like it's a good thing, but it's really quite self-destructive in the long run.
For as long as I can remember, I've always lived by the maxim that selfishness actually is, if you take it to its logical conclusion, it's actually a good thing, because but you have to take it in the wider context of your life, not just like your immediate kind of needs and wants and results of things. But if you think about what's good for you, and you put that in terms of actually the way that everyone around me is affected by the things I do affects my life as well, then actually doing things that make the people around you happy is a selfish act, because it creates an environment for yourself which is more beneficial to you. It's a bit like that. It's a bit like altruism. Do you know what I mean? It's like, at the end of the day, doing good things for everyone in the human race is in your best interests. You know, if you can see selfishness as that, and not just a case of, well, I'm going to have everything for myself, because at the end of the day, you're going to end up alone and hated, and yeah, you might have all the money and the possessions in the world, but what the fuck use is that if nobody likes you and you're a horrible person and you've got no self-respect? You know?
I guess, but then there's sort of a flip side where you can be trying to please people to your own detriment, and none of the good stuff really ever comes. It's not to, and yet that's not your intention, to try and make people be nice to you or anything. It's just to be. I
suppose that's where living and learning comes in, because you kind of
to other people.
That would work if everybody lived by the same code, but there are people around you who, for one reason or another, are not able to reciprocate. Whether it's because they don't want to, or they just don't have the capacity to be nice to you.
See, I think this is slightly off topic, which is not like me, but I think about sort of interactions of, I guess, moments that might have happened years ago, but I still think about, and I wonder if the other person ever. I wonder what makes those things stand out to me. I wonder if someone else has just completely brushed over it. They don't really care, but for some reason it's stuck in my mind.
Would regret be anything to do with that, do you think? Or?
Yeah, quite possibly. But
again, that's an example of what you regard from your perspective now as a mistake, and you've learned from that, presumably. If you feel, but if you wish you hadn't done that, then doing that has taught you that value.
It can be like a really minor thing. It's like, no one fucking cares, but like for some reason my brain's making me think of this at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I suppose, that kid that got kicked in the shins he might actually be a fucking arsehole now, and he might, it might have nothing to do with, he might not even remember that, but actually the biggest damage that was done that I know for certain about that was in my mind. I might have been hurting him, but he might have completely forgotten about it, and actually it might have strengthened him. I'm not trying to justify what I did, but it's like, I mean, I suppose that would be a bit like looking at Germany now and thanking Hitler for it. It's a bit kind of counterintuitive, do you know what I mean?
I mean, it's better than the UK, I guess, but like it's still not in a great shape.
What, Germany?
Yeah, I mean, most of the world's not really, is it?
No, I think Germany's probably it's probably the strongest country in Europe, though.
Being strong doesn't mean you're.
When I say strong, I mean, I don't mean dominatory strong. I just mean secure. I mean, like kind of safe,
stable.
Yeah, stable. That's what.
But yeah, it's still got poverty and it's still got assholes.
Yeah.
Like
people wouldn't be able to
the
ship,
third most popular party, I think, is kind of worryingly close to Nazi rhetoric in the 30s, not in the 30s,
at least
the
the
20s.
Popular.
Yeah.
Do you think Nazism is evil?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because it's sort of like, but I think like the Nazi ideas are. But then it's sort of, can someone who would otherwise be good get drawn into that and still be a good person? Is it even worth quantifying it, really?
What's the difference? I mean, you're politically minded. You're more educated in politics than I. I'm aware that I'm drifting into beer territory. What's the essential difference between Nazism and fascism?
Nazism specifically to do with the Nazi party.
Right.
So,
because there was that whole master race thing, wasn't there? Which is weird because Hitler wasn't an Aryan.
Well, that'll be to do with like doctrines to do with like phrenology and shit about scientific racism.
I'm just going to play advocate for the people out there who, like me, don't know what phrenology means. I've heard of
the study of skulls, which on its own doesn't sound too bad, but when you start trying to use that to justify,
I'm going to go out on a limb
another person.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, totally unrelated, that I actually quite enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Okay.
It's a contentious subject because there's lots of people that deny it even took place. But I'm sorry to divert. I'm going to come back to your phrenology thing, but I have a bone to pick with people who question the validity of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
A bone, like the bones in a skull.
Maybe, yes. It's like, for me, one of the big sort of things that people go on about is like, I mean, I know it's unbelievable, the bit about him hiding in the fridge from the nuclear bomb and stuff like that, but
that's a classic.
I actually enjoyed that scene because I even though they're horrible weapons, there's something terrifyingly awesome about seeing a mushroom cloud. Yeah, they used to have in Las Vegas. They used to have nuclear tourism. Really? People used to go to Las Vegas to spectate the nuclear testing in the Nevada desert from a distance, obviously.
Yeah, I think there's very little of Nevada that actually belongs to Nevada because it's all test sites, basically.
But anyway, yeah, my point being that anyone who says that it becomes just like, oh my god, when the aliens turn up, it's like, well, I'm sorry, but in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you should have been saying exactly the same thing when the Holy Spirit starts ripping people's faces off, because it's like, to me, that's far less believable. At least aliens are a possibility. you know.
I guess it's sort of more going from the sort of fantasy historical type thing to
So I think
sci-fi.
it is. Yeah, but I think a lot of the people who were the right age to overlook all of the unbelievability about Raiders of the Lost Ark had become old enough to start criticizing stuff by the time Crystal Skull came along.
Mm.
Anyway, I've just alienated half of the After Dark podcast network, so we shall move on.
Well, you have shit film opinions anyway, so...
Me?
Well, according to general consensus, you do, so...
Yeah, but the thing is, I get to enjoy a lot more films.
They probably disregard your opinions on most things anyway.
So go back to phrenology while I get the second...
No, it more sort of a...
Are you going to get to look at a real skull? Look inside a real skull?
I already have.
Have you?
Yeah, when we did the first practical for Diversity of Life, that's the one that looks back at like evolutionary history. We did a sort of whistle-stop tour of the geological periods, and there were some skulls of like... I think they were newer skulls of animals that sort of began in, I think, the Jurassic period. Because like a lot of the mammals started popping up in there. But those weren't like fossils, those were newer things.
I'm a bit, well, not worried. I feel like so far this episode has been probably the most on subject that we've ever done, and I've been thinking it's one of our better episodes so far, which probably means that it's a bit shit.
Really? I thought it started awfully.
For the first 20 minutes, half an hour, but once we got onto evil, I think we've stayed on evil quite well. Like, we've meandered about a bit, but
yeah. Well,
this is the sort of mid-episode taking stock.
Yeah, with Nazism, it's specifically National Socialism. It's not socialist, but it sort of uses the rhetoric of, oh, we're for the people, but only if you're white. And
oh, that's news. Sorry, going back to news. What's her name? New Zealand woman. What's her name?
Jacinda Ardern.
Is that the Prime Minister in New Zealand?
Yeah.
She's just
New
won.
Zealand woman. She's like
just
a superhero.
She's just won her second term.
Like a really shit one. Like
so it's
Kiwi girl.
Socialism.
Well, it's using socialist rhetoric to try and get the working class on side, which is kind of because Germany after the First World War was kind of a bit fucked economically. There was a lot of sort of space to blame it on someone.
Yeah.
I.e. the Jews.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Who had the stereotype around them of being rich.
I don't understand the argument against socialism. I understand how politically things are manipulated to gain power by people, but I don't understand how people fall for... let's say fall for. I don't understand how anyone can sell the idea that socialism is a bad thing, because
that's
it's not
the very thing. They're buying basically advertising space to say, no, you just need to work hard and then you'll succeed. And it's sort of relying on you believing that.
But is this not a prime example of what I was saying about the economy of words, the reduction of the vocabulary, and the whole idea of 1984 doublespeak, of turning a word into its opposite, really. I mean, when you think of what the meaning of the word social is,
yeah,
and to have people thinking the opposite about it.
I mean, a good example is even the word Soviet. I think a lot of people just think it means like the demonym of the USSR, but like a Soviet was actually like
the what?
of the USSR.
The word before that. The what?
Demonym.
So demonym. What's a demonym?
An adjective to describe someone from a place. So like English would be someone from England. French would be someone from France.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know what.
So
I heard demonym before.
Well,
it sounds like a hybrid of synonym and denim. You used to be able to make a fortune selling denim jeans in Moscow, you know. And back in the 80s, they said if you're ever going to go to Moscow, take a suitcase full of jeans with you because they don't have denim, and they will sell. You'll be able to make a bomb with them. You said demonym, not demonym.
Yeah, so demos
demonym.
People.
Ooh. So is there any link there? Because I mean, everything's linguistically connected back to either Greek or Latin, usually. So the idea of democracy,
people power,
and demonstration, and
I'm sure about demonstration.
Demons. What does demo mean?
Demo means people.
People. So a demon.
I mean, the problem with English is that it's such a fucking amalgamation of so many different languages that it kind of gets confusing where things come from.
Yeah, I suppose.
Like a lot of our words from like science come and like philosophy come from Greek. A lot of our general words come from Latin.
So that's the opposite of democracy. Is it autocracy?
Yeah, or monarchy, or something like that.
It's a weird thing what we've got though, isn't it? I mean, we have a monarchy, but it's not.
Yeah, it's what you call a constitutional monarchy. So where like the monarch doesn't hold the proper power, although in some constitutional monarchies I think they do have a bit more power than ours, but as opposed to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, which has an absolute monarchy that actually has basically all the control over the government.
Do you think the monarchy will survive your lifetime? Our monarchy?
I'm not sure the United Kingdom as a whole will.
Yeah, that's an interesting one though. I think England would be far more likely to keep the monarchy than the UK.
Think a lot of the sort of... I don't know, I think it's just a lot of people just don't really care because they don't really do anything other than give the Express a couple of stories.
They're kind of caretakers, really, aren't they? I mean, like, they're kind of historic monument caretakers.
Before Parliament was there to sort of just hold them to account.
Not even caretakers. It'd be their staff that are the caretakers. They're kind of they're the face, aren't they? They're the kind of representatives of.
Yeah. Well,
they're kind of the Mickey Mouse. They're the kind of the Mickey Mouse. If United Kingdom was Disney World, they'd be like the Mickey Mouse. They're the face. They're not real.
I guess, yeah.
But they're the thing that sells it.
I mean, it does speak volumes that they've managed to make a drama out of Elizabeth II's life on Netflix. And, like, it doesn't feel real because it's a fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
The fact that we still have a queen, and when Parliament opens, some man goes and knocks on the door to have the door ceremoniously slammed in his face.
But that's what I mean.
Say that the Queen doesn't belong there, even though it's her Parliament.
But that's it. It's a brand, isn't it? It's a brand image. It's UK Inc. It's like,
yeah. I mean, it's probably a lot more important for like Commonwealth stuff, but
even now, it's not. I mean, it's not the British Commonwealth anymore.
Well, the Queen's still the head of state, technically, for like Canada and Australia. And that.
Yeah, but the label of British has been taken off the label of Commonwealth.
Well, it's Commonwealth as opposed to Empire now.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not British anymore. It's just the Commonwealth now. It's not the British Commonwealth anymore.
Well, because there could be several Commonwealths. It's really the only one left around, I think.
Yeah. But that's interesting, actually, that there are that the Union flag is part of.
What do you think? The United Kingdom doesn't really make sense if there are other United Kingdoms.
When the UK splits up, do you think England will try to keep the Union flag?
I don't know. There have been theories of like trying to do the sort of half and half that the Wales flag has, or just having some garish mess that's just a bunch of red lines.
I can't really see if Scotland leaves, I can't really see Wales and Northern Ireland not following at some point fairly soon after.
Yeah, something that I have been surprised by is, which I didn't really know anything about, is there's been I mean, it's not massive, but growing support for Welsh independence.
Well, I think this year is an unintentional. Well, historically, it's going to be fascinating to look back on, because I think, actually over this past week, Wales has seemed more likely to break away from the UK, even though the polls up here are looking a lot better for independence. Yeah, Wales are actually pretty much closing their borders to England at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think everywhere is, but well, they're basically trying to get a border with Kent, which, I'm not against. Kent can probably keep to itself, but it's not really the behaviour of a unionist government.
No. It's a fascinating time in which we live.
Back to the fascism, because that's relevant to the time in which we live, unfortunately. Yeah, it's sort of, a lot of that's to do with kind of like to, I don't know, I wonder if facade is anywhere related to the etymology of fascism.
I don't think so, because there's an S in fascism. But what I would be interested to look at, actually, is that fascism is most often used by people like us as a negative label. Are there people who see the definition of fascism as a good thing?
Definitely. There are proud fascists. Is it
not kind of in our best interests, whether or not we are in agreement, to at least understand why somebody or how somebody would be proud of that standpoint? Because
well, it's sort of getting the balance between trying to understand it to go against it and just going against it, because there's not a rationalization of that mode of thinking. It's a poisoned mind that would turn to that.
Yeah, but in a way, it's kind of, it's difficult to. I agree with you, but I also realize that it's difficult to, when you've got opposing sides that can either destroy each other or try to understand each other and come to some kind of agreement. I mean, because obviously there are fascists who think the same about socialists.
Well, yeah.
The Red Scare and all that is kind of...
Well, I think that's probably a lot of where, at least in America, this sort of where they can use the far left as like a scaremongering thing, and it actually has any effect.
I think that probably has a lot to do with that Overton window, though, because you can only really succeed in that argument in a society where it's far
in America,
right
where like Biden's
relevant,
not even a centrist. Like, he's pretty comfortably right wing, like about as far right as you can go with while still being a Democrat, like borderline conservative kind of Biden. The only reason like his policies are a bit more skewed to centre, although still pretty right wing, because the rest of his party is a bit more progressive. Like, there's less stigma about that now, I guess. But
thing is, and I don't want to lump everyone into this category, but I remember a time when I would have voted Conservative and kind of followed that kind of. I mean, it was when I was down in Northamptonshire, and I had friends who seriously said that they would leave the country if Labour got in, and I was surrounded by people when I lived in that area that would always vote Conservative, and I kind of fell for all of that. But the thing is, I'm not going to lump anyone else in with this. It does
surprise me a bit, though, because
the only reason that I know that I felt that way is because I didn't really know anything about politics at the time.
Well, yeah.
And the more I've learned, but I don't want to say that means that other people who vote Conservative are doing so out of ignorance, because obviously there are people that know a lot about politics and choose to vote Conservative still. But
it does surprise me.
It was ignorance
a bit,
for me,
though, with the area that you grew up in, because now it's still pretty much a pretty similar situation from what I gather politically, but it's not exactly thriving.
No, it never really was.
The main sort of economic hub is that big shopping centre, but well,
the thing is, I mean, knowing that area, I would have been mixing with people who were more conservative, successful business people, so-called respectable people who had money and wealth. I know that there was a lot of deprivation around, and I did see a lot of it when I was driving taxis, but I also know that they were the kind of people that would be a lot less likely to vote, because they really not because they weren't kind of educated in it. I don't know. It's just kind of a beaten down thing. They probably just felt like there was no point because the battle was already lost, and it's like their time would be better spent just getting on with surviving.
Like in our constituency, I'm angry that I haven't been able to vote, but in another constituency where Tories,
Scottish elections.
Well, yeah, but there hasn't actually been one in my.
I think there's one coming up.
Yeah. But I've been annoyed that I haven't been able to vote in that. Here, it's actually a pretty marginal seat. I think in the last election it was 800 votes.
Yeah, this
by which the
this
SNP
was a Conservative seat before the last election, wasn't it?
So I would definitely see quite a strong argument for voting here. But if you were in, I don't know, fucking Devon or something. One of those that it's just sort of they're Tories.
But surely that's a sign that the electoral system doesn't work that we've got. I mean, it's maybe not as bad as, it's definitely not as bad as or inefficient as the American one.
Especially where 41% of the country voted for Tories, but well over 50%, maybe even a bit over 60% of the seats are Tories.
Yeah.
Which means that they effectively have 100% control over the government and aren't actually at all accountable to anyone, basically. They can break the law and it's just we have a majority and you lose your job if you don't go with us, so...
Would you feel comfortable speaking to the audience for a few minutes while I go for a wee?
Probably...
You talk to the audience. You keep them entertained while I go and empty
my... You can edit, but...
I can, but I don't necessarily will.
You don't necessarily will?
No. That's the beer talking. Oh, I could get myself another one. You got enough?
Yeah.
Don't lie to them about me.
The truth is worse than any lie I could come up with. Don't know. I guess I could talk about what stuff I've been looking at in my studies in a very droll way, like I normally do. I've been looking at mosses, actually, bryophytes. They're sort of the simplest land plants, kind of, because they don't have any water transport systems like trees or flowers have. But it was the thing that interested me, because I did like a lab practical and we had to look at them through a, I think it was a dissection microscope it's called. I know what a microscope is, but I'm not really sure if there's different kinds of microscopes, obviously. So I think it was a dissection microscope. But yeah, basically I took a leaf off one of these mosses and looked at it, and it's a bit different to looking at other plants because the leaves are one cell thick, which means that you can see very clearly. Also, they don't have any of like the hole in the middle of them where you'd normally get sugars, the vacuole. So you can basically see the chloroplast, which is where the photosynthesis happens. It's very interesting if you like me, but it's
Don't worry, I'm back.
It's probably the thing that would scare other people off at party.
Do you think it's interesting that the word evil is live backwards?
Not really.
Fine. Be like that then.
You're just trying to think of words.
Well, yeah, because that's our currency. Do you think
that's sort of wise?
Do you think Ben is evil?
Nah, I just think he's a bit of a twat.
Do you think he listens to any of the After Dark stuff now?
Probably. But he seems like the sort of person who doesn't really care what people think about him. So
the people that listen to this that are going, who the fuck is Ben? Which episode was it?
If you have,
it was
3 hours.
It wasn't actually breaking bollocks, was it?
Soul wrenching time. Go listen to episode 6, the Bollocks Report, which was
painful. He actually got
well over a year ago.
Oh my god! I'm just thinking, where are we going as a society?
Oh, I thought you meant as a channel, but
both really.
Yeah, well, it's just sort of.
We've been thrown a curveball, really. I mean,
not really. I mean, if you were paying attention, it's sort of like a disease would have happened eventually. We should be ready for that sort of thing.
Yeah, but the problem is, and I think this is perhaps like that frog in boiling water thing that's happening with climate change, is that the longer you're warned about something and the longer it doesn't happen, the less you're likely to actually do anything about it.
Do you reckon that's happened with Brexit?
Because there haven't been any consequences yet, other than...
Well, I cared about it when it was like last year when they were supposed to be finalising the deal. Well, there were a good 2 or 3 years where in that.
There was a good 2 or 3 years where there was fuck all else on the news.
But like now, it's sort of they're breaking international law, and it's sort of like, yeah, that's the government.
Do you remember when
now?
It's like 2016, wasn't it?
And they don't even have to put it behind like some Secrets Act where they commit war crimes and then pretend they didn't.
Do you remember? I think it was when Theresa May was still in charge, or had Boris taken over? But basically, when the government got taken to court.
Oh, that was in Theresa May's government, because they've been held in contempt of Parliament, I think.
Yeah. It's just like, but like you say, it's just like normal now. It's kind of, but it's like this is when we begin to
because they can. I think the thing is, then there was a chance, there was hope of something actually happening.
But the point is,
but now it's just
everybody's like sort of complaining about the fact that we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. We know the government are corrupt. We know they break the law all the time. But it's like everybody's just like throwing their hands up in the air going, well, what the fuck can we do about it? It's like, well, the majority, well, not even the majority, but what can we do about it? Because majority of people didn't vote them in.
Yeah, I mean...
So is the system itself evil?
I don't know. I get pissed off at Labour right now. That's the only solace I can find, because, you know, everyone's pissed off at the Tories. Everyone with like 2 brain cells. But
Yeah,
I get annoyed at Labour for just being a bit soft, and
they've gone back to Tony Blair. I mean, the thing is, it's not even that different a slogan. You know, it was when Tony Blair won, it was on the back of a new Labour. Now it's going to be on the back of a new leadership. It's like, just turn your emblem blue and have done with it. It might be sky blue instead of deep blue. But
he says he still wants to move progressive ideas about socialist.
His parents being proud of him getting a knighthood. It's like, you're fucking Labour. You know, anybody who really stands for the values of socialism would have refused it.
Yeah, with knighthoods and MBEs, I find it much more interesting looking at the people that turned them down than actually got them.
Absolutely.
I mean, John Lennon turned down it a couple of times. I can't remember.
Yeah, look what happened to him. Oh, holy!
Are you conspiracy theorizing, or are you just sort of remarking?
I'm not really doing anything now other than drinking beer. I don't know if you noticed, but I had one extra in the tally than you this tonight because I had to get the when I went to the co-op earlier, I had to get our shopping total up over £20 to get £2 off. So I had to make sure that I had enough. And adding up my basket of stuff, I thought the only way I can really guarantee that's going to happen after all the discounts have come off is by chucking an extra bottle of beer in for myself. And I knew you wouldn't want 4 because they're these big ones anyway. I'm getting a little bit.
You're very frugal.
What? I do know what that means, but
getting an extra beer just to get the discount.
Is that frugal?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it might be if it weren't for the fact that the extra beer costs more than the discount.
Oh, I guess.
But I suppose really
you're very stupid.
No, I suppose it kind of means you're getting a decent sized bottle of beer for about 50p. So essentially. But I didn't realise we didn't get our discount on the cheese. So maybe there's only one discount applied at a time, which means we've now got 1.5 blocks of cheese, and I'm still going to have to go and buy another block of cheese before the end of Sunday, before the end of tomorrow, to get that discount.
Okay.
That's not going to happen though, is it? I've thrown away a discount on cheese.
Are you okay?
No, I seem to reach 11. Do you remember, what was that sketch where?
The cheese.
What was that sketch where is it like 2.5 pints or something? Is 2.25 pints?
Oh, that Mitchell and Webb look.
What? How much is it?
Yeah, 2.5 drinks. I think it. No, it's 1.5 drinks.
1.5.
1.5 drinks, and you have enough confidence to take the world by storm. But any more than that, and it all goes to shit.
Yeah, I think that's the point that I've just reached. But I don't know if I've gone so far beyond it that I fully believe it's all going to shit yet. The trouble is...
No, you never do. And then you get a concussion.
Well, or break a thumb or something.
Oh, yeah.
I've done that.
I'm not surprised.
I remember that I had to play. I actually had
Talking about losing your vocabulary. You're just trying to demonstrate.
I had to sequence the Scottish dances for our Kaylee numbers in the band one Christmas because I'd broken my thumb and I couldn't play them.
How did you break your thumb?
I was out getting pissed with
Naturally.
the band, same band, and I got back to because obviously I didn't want to drive. I tended to at that time book myself a Travelodge room or something similar in Aberdeen for the night and go back the next day on the train. And it might have been Premier Inn, I don't know. But anyway, this is relevant, isn't it? Well, I suppose it shows how frugal you are because Premier Inn is a bit more expensive. But anyway, my thumb got in the way of the door when I was closing it. Mind you, it's not as bad as you. When was it? Where were we when we went to a gig and we got back to the hotel room and you smacked your head off the wall? Where was that?
That was after. Yeah, well,
that was the Queen gig, wasn't it? Because that was the only one that you and me went to.
No, it was after that one that I probably shouldn't have been drinking at, but you know.
Oh, the one that I played at, the Crossfire gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you were prancing about in your feather boa. That was
fun.
It was good fun. You had a good time that night. But especially like bashing your head off the wall.
I swear there were some old ladies trying to come on to me there.
Why not? They weren't that old anyway. Oh, I suppose some of them might have been. Actually, one of them, I was really surprised to find out was in her 70s at one point.
They were all definitely over
my
40.
It's my choir. I still don't know if I'm going to go back and conduct them. Maybe I should. I don't know. They pay me, so.
I mean, I guess sort of getting back a bit
evil.
on track.
Von Trapp.
Sort of.
The hills are alive.
I mean, I think I've asked this question before on this podcast, but I'll ask it more in this lens. Is it okay to punch a Nazi?
Well, there's only... I would say no, but only for one reason. You might hurt your hand.
Not if you know how to throw a punch.
Yeah, but I'm a pianist. It's not worth risking damaging my fingers on a piece of shit.
And do you carry that philosophy to the toilet?
Yeah, I don't punch turds either. Although I'd probably be less reluctant.
Well, I was more meaning like getting your fingers stuck up your ass, trying to wipe.
Why would I get my fingers stuck up my ass?
Sometimes you need to get right up in there.
Do you?
Well, not like that,
really?
but like...
No,
I've had tissues stuck up there.
What?
I've had tissues stuck up there.
What? Have you? Have you not heard of Vaseline?
What? No, like bits of tissue, like you know how like it'll rip.
Oh,
off.
not like the whole loo roll then.
No.
You're not Freddie Starr. Or what's his name? Who was the guy that got the hamster stuck up his arse?
I don't know.
There's people out there that are shouting at their podcast devices now. Richard Gere, I think it was.
Okay.
Possibly. I feel like we're stumbling around in search of
in terms of
sentence.
Is it okay to punch a Nazi?
In the bum.
No.
Is it okay to fist a Nazi?
That's another discussion.
Only if they've been really good.
Well, the point is that no Nazi is really good, so you would never do that. But is the Nazi like responsible enough that like they deserve that? Are you being evil by potentially pushing them further into that?
I don't understand how people justify being Nazis or similar kind of...
Well done, you're normal.
Yeah, but... Well, it's not... I just don't get it. I mean, don't shoot me or anything. I just don't get it.
That's pretty normal, good thing.
I know,
Not
but there's
Nazism.
a lot... But yeah, but it's not like it's not like it's just a few kind of mentally ill people.
Yeah, well...
there is a whole movement,
And it's sort of... And it's not just Nazism or fascism, but like it's the same process by which like ISIS members would get indoctrinated by radicalization.
So they're brainwashed then?
Sort of, but in a way that's sort of largely helped by like
how do you define that though? Because are we
way
not all,
in which a lot of social media platforms work.
Are we not all subject to some form of mental detergent? I mean, saying brainwashed, I suppose the definition of that means that you've been convinced of something which is not widely accepted by society.
Not necessarily. There are a lot of things that you can be brainwashed into that are widely accepted by society. That often helps, like religions or capitalism, which is kind of like a religion, but shit. Without any of the philosophy.
Yeah. I think there's a fair amount of hope at the moment, though, even though there's a lot of darkness and death and destruction. But it feels like COVID is at the very least not man-made. So it's kind of well, it might actually succeed in making a difference because it's not under our control.
It's not.
We don't succeed in making significant good changes as human beings. So maybe having something forced on us by nature is
climate change isn't technically man-made because it's like it's always happening, but it's sort of the thing where we can control how bad it is for us and for
the holy trilogy of holy trinity of possibly disastrous good things happening. We've got climate change, COVID. What was the other one?
What, rising fascism and opposition to it?
I've forgotten. There were three things. Don't know. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I'm awfully sorry. There is evil loose in my brain, and I'm making less sense as we go along.
Well, climate change, a pandemic, plus a political crisis, things are bound to get shook up a bit.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing, thinking about that, when you're talking about global politics, you're not talking about a single thing like UK politics, which is soon to become.
But I mean,
minus anyway.
The barbarians at the gates, like a lot of the things here seeming similar to like the collapse of Rome, or like the years leading up to it.
But that was an isolated empire, really. I mean,
what?
Well, it wasn't a global thing. Although capitalism's not global, is it?
It's pretty global.
But there are socialist states, aren't there?
Yeah, but most of them do trade with their neighbours. I mean, if you're thinking about like
North Korea,
China and Vietnam, they still trade in a capitalistic way. They have companies that are owned by.
Do you think North Korea does?
No, I mean, North Korea is very insular, but that's a pretty extreme example. The Roman Empire was definitely quite different.
Yeah. But see, when the Roman Empire collapsed, how I mean, we look back at it. Obviously, it was I don't know exactly, but it was round about a couple of millennia ago. How quickly did it happen? Well,
it first sort of split into the Eastern and Western Roman empires. So the Western sort of Italy itself up to like Britain, and also Spain, and pretty much all of France. And then the Eastern Roman Empire that became the Byzantines, and by a bit of complicated wars and religious shit.
Just tell me how quickly it happened.
Over a couple of centuries, really, because...
so we got a while to wait then.
I mean, I would say that it's probably doomed to happen eventually.
What do you think 2021 is going to be like compared to 2020?
Well,
I think it's kind of fucked up that we talk about COVID-19. So, is it going to be a COVID-20?
it's almost poetic though. It was discovered I think it was right on New Year's Eve of 2019. It was sort of dooming this year to be the year of COVID-19, even though it's technically discovered in 2019.
I mean, I'm trying to remember where we played on New Year's Eve. It's not happening this year. But just that thought of the striking of midnight, New Year, it's like...
There have been a few sort of little murmurs of vaccines from Russia and China, I think. But
yeah, but Russia's been criticised for going ahead way too quickly, haven't they?
With the vaccines or with...
Yeah, vaccines.
Lifting lockdowns.
No, vaccines. Not proper testing and stuff. You don't know what's political and what's not, do you?
Yeah, well, it's sort of... When, they say, oh, Russia's got a vaccine, a lot of people will, be suspicious because it's Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia's kind of got this sort of shady aura around it, especially in recent years. But it's sort of, if Russian scientists do discover it because they're the ones actually researching it, are we actually looking into if that's maybe good?
Well, see, the thing is, regardless of whether or not it's a good vaccine, it's always going to be tainted by whether or not it's economically a good thing that Russia's come up with it, and whether or not taking advantage of their progress is going to benefit capitalist Western societies in the long run, economically. I mean, if we have to buy it from Russia, if we have to pay them...
We buy most of our stuff from China, don't we? We don't really have an issue with that. I mean, occasionally there's a thing about, Huawei might be spying on us through 5G and they cause coronavirus and blah, blah, blah.
5G.
I mean, some of that concern may be warranted, but in terms of spying, the US government could very easily spy on us right now.
It's very...
or the British government.
It's ironic, though, isn't it, that probably one of our most famous kind of franchises as a British incorporation, if you like, is a spy.
in an interesting way to the United Kingdom, but...
What?
British incorporation.
Yeah. Well, that's essentially what countries are, isn't it? Corporations. Well, not really. I mean, they're kind of conglomerations of corporations, or they're at least controlled by corporations.
Yeah, I mean, they have a board of directors and people that actually make the thing run beneath them.
And, well, I suppose, yeah.
And they try and compete with one another.
I'm thinking we should perhaps be thinking about winding up this celebration of evil. Are you going to froth out over the top of your bottleneck?
That's fine. I wanted to talk a bit more about radicalization into...
Go on then.
Because you were sort of saying at the start of this about, do people know that what they're doing is evil? Or do people think that what they're doing is evil?
I wonder if you get to a point where...
do it.
I mean... I wonder if some people get to a point where they realise that what they're doing is wrong, inherently wrong. But because they're so far down a path, there's almost no way out anymore.
Right.
I mean, what goes through your mind when you walk into a public events arena with a suicide vest strapped to yourself and you see children around you. Kind of, I mean, that whole idea of brainwashing, the idea of, but you've got to be damn convinced that what you're doing is right to go through with that.
Yeah, there's a certain point of that, though. I mean, you might be ideologically convinced, but there's got to be doubt.
But that's the point. If there is doubt, then surely you're less likely to do it. That's what I mean. To actually go through with it, you've got to be damn convinced. You've got to pretty much know that you're.
If you
right.
are actually like part of a terrorist cell, like they might torture you if you don't go through with it.
So, like, it's almost like fear. At least the suicide mission is kind of my only way out.
But like,
of that.
if you believe in that like whole afterlife thing, then you would believe that you're. Even though you're dying, and I don't believe that there's anything after that, but...
That's my point. If you do believe in that whole afterlife thing, then you have to believe wholeheartedly that you're right. If you're doing it out of fear, if there's any doubt there and you're doing it out of fear of being tortured if you don't do it, then that's not the same thing.
Fear of being tortured by tangible people on Earth, but also... I don't... like trying to get into like some version of heaven, then
that's what I mean. Though you've got to be.
You're doing that out of fear of going to the other place.
But surely you have to be thinking as well. What if I'm wrong? What if actually doing this is guaranteeing me a route to the other place? If you believe in that heaven and hell malarkey, then surely you've got to be so closed-minded. You've got to be so convinced that you're in the right, that you're on the right side.
There's obviously going to be the thing that would lead you down that path is so much information being bombarded at you, telling you that is the right way.
I don't think...
And that anyone that disagrees is a traitor and evil.
Thing is, I don't think, as much as we can theorise about how it feels and what goes through your mind to be in that situation, I don't think we can even begin to imagine what mental processes you have to have been through and what mental state you have to be in to get to that position from where we are.
Yeah.
You can philosophize about it, but at the end of the day, we thankfully have never and hopefully will never experience that. But it is, I suppose that's what this podcast's about, isn't it? It's interesting to be thinking about and talking about these things because people do need to try and make sense of the world because these things exist in our world. You know, there are things that happen naturally like COVID and to a certain extent climate change, but you know, I suppose more naturally occurring events you might think of as things like tsunamis and stuff. There are things that aren't human kind of caused, but to try and get your head around things that human beings are responsible for, either collectively or individually, it's delving below that species psyche, isn't it? I mean, one thing we've got in common with people who have committed all of the atrocities and evils that society is capable of, and I'm talking about all sorts of things like the Spanish Inquisition stuff and, you know, some really horrific stuff that human beings have done. Whether we like it or not, we have in common with the people who instigated those actions the fact that we are human. So to try to understand those actions is, I think, a responsibility, really. It's just scary.
Well, it's
Do
mainly
you think
trying
horror
to.
has something to do with that? Because like this whole idea of like, you know, films about serial killers and
Yeah, there's a sort of fascination with death there, but yeah, with especially looking at like the atrocities committed during the colonial era, and some which still are committed, is understanding just that the effects are still here. Like we're
Yeah.
still living in a society that never really dealt with that. Like it just sort of legally got phased out, but a lot of the systems under which that was allowed to happen are like the power structures there are still very much here.
Do you know what I find quite scary though? In an interesting kind of way, and I suppose it's a philosophical thing, but imagine if you lived in a society where everyone in that society was brainwashed and controlled.
I don't really need to imagine.
Yeah, but the thing is, if that were the case, you wouldn't know about it because you would be one of them.
There are some ways in which I realise, like, my attention's directed, even if I'm able to realise that, like, what I actually do with that is going to be very much affected by the information I get.
We do, but like you said before, we do willingly partake. You know, I have been a vegan over the past year, and I have chosen to go back to eating meat, even though I know it has an adverse effect on the environment. I mean, I never really did it out of the animal cruelty issues, although some people do, and I can completely understand that. I drive a diesel car. We have oil central heating. Okay, that's not entirely within our control because we live in a council house and they put the oil tanks in.
Yeah, we would freeze to death.
And
we didn't have that.
Yeah, you know, I would drive an electric car if it was feasible. But there are things that are within our control, like the veganism thing, and we make choices that we could make differently if we were that inclined to do it.
But the point is, like, we don't have a choice over what everyone else does unless we all agree to change by changing the system in which those things happen.
But that's how things gradually spread, though, isn't it? I mean, that with the issue of veganism, that has begun to take hold more.
Yeah. I don't know what that beep was.
I don't know. It freaks me out, though, because I just think I sometimes feel like my MacBook's dying.
Yeah, it's just screaming out in pain.
Yeah. And maybe it's telling us we've gone over 2 hours now and we should think about winding it up.
Maybe you're telling me that.
Yeah, I am. I need a wee again, so... Is there anything else you want to say about evil other than...
Probably.
The fact that I am? Anything else?
Yeah, probably, but we're going to be here all night, so...
There's a lot of evil in the world to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's go and watch some Lemmy.
Oh, one thing I do want to talk about is... I mean... I guess it's sort of general politicians, but specifically Obama.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of, if you're not a Republican, is hailed as like, oh, one of the greatest presidents, and because like it's the first black president, it's sort of like, it's a big milestone.
I feel like you're going to say something controversial now.
Well, it's supposed to sort of represent hope and change and that sort of stuff, because that's what his campaign was all about. You know?
What's he done wrong?
Yes, we can. Well,
he's done something, hasn't he?
Hundreds of civilian deaths in the Middle East, for one.
Yeah.
And it's not just, he was there while that was happening. He personally
It's a perspective thing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, you need to kill those people. He actually introduced that whole sort of kill list thing where it's like, no, I get to specifically say that these people die.
That's scary. You're fucking evil, because you got me thinking, well, of all the things that you can say about Trump, he doesn't seem to be out so much to go and kill people in foreign countries as Obama did. It's like, no, don't have me thinking nice things about the orange bastard.
Yeah, people talking about if Trump dies getting COVID would be like Obama dying in a Yemeni wedding procession.
Yeah. So that, I suppose, what in coming to and I reference myself as well. This is going back to that whole thing that everybody is capable of both good and evil, because obviously Obama did a lot of good.
It does freak me out though, the way in which people talk about it and just do not mention the war crimes and the spying on Americans as well. And while Obamacare was there, like, there was a lot of feeling of that was kind of...
I still prefer him over Trump, though.
Well, yeah, but, like, they're all awful.
Yeah. Which makes you think, is the problem really with individuals, or is it that the system itself is inherently evil?
Well, that's the
or
thing,
controlled by people who
I've not so subtly tried to get home here.
Yeah.
It strikes me about this whole the opposing side. One's good, one's evil. It's like, no, they're all awful. We need something new that isn't just this black and white.
Yeah, but at the same time, that in itself is a kind of a black and
colour.
White. Yeah, but in some ways that is in itself a black and white sort of analysis of it, because they're not all only awful. They all have good aspects as well. They're just different good and evil aspects depending on who you choose.
I guess.
I mean, let's face it, from a comedy point of view, Trump's fucking gold.
Yeah, but like the Spanish Inquisition was pretty funny when Monty Python does. But
I think that's a brilliant way to end things off. That's ace. Yeah, something good came out of the Spanish Inquisition.
What a Monty Python sketch that in no way makes up for thousands, if not millions, killed.
Yeah, but still, however small it was, something good came out of it.
There was a tweet I saw.
Stop talking.
It was about sort of I think it was when because people fairly regularly go, oh, Churchill was kind of a bit of a bastard, but we still hail him as a hero. It's saying about, Hitler was 72 racisms, and if Churchill was 42 racisms, people would just say Hitler was 30 racisms, rather than acknowledging that Churchill had a net negative effect on the world, really.
So it was like, it's a case of just comparing something with something much worse to make it look better.
Which is how politics essentially works.
Yeah.
I was like, look at what my opponent did, and don't think about all the horrible things that will still be happening under my government, but, the wording will have changed a bit.
So, anyway, I'm going to have to insist, otherwise I'm going to have to take another wee break, and I think we're probably round about the right time to just wind things up.
All right. So, this is a bit of a weird one, but... I
don't know, I think it's been all right. It's taken a couple of tangents, but in general, I think we've stayed on topic a lot more than we might normally do. But it's easy to talk about evil. There's so much of it about.
That's depressing. Anyway,
on that note,
I've been Firebolt.
I've been the Orbiter.
No, I usually want to punch you. Anyway, this has been
we've done
Breaking Bollocks.
We've done that.
Episode 70.
We've done that. We're in the out.
No, we
after
fucking haven't.
We are, because I edit
up.
it. This is going after.
Oh my god.
I've already picked my cut point.
No, you haven't.
I have. This is the after argument.
Off. No, this is gonna be before the outro.
You have no control over it. I edit.
Well, you don't know, do you?
No, but I choose. I choose whether
you choose the start and the end, and then you just
please, because I'm gonna piss myself. You know the Bridge Club are never going to let us back now.
Is it evil if I enjoy the fact that you're being tortured right now?
Not until you start smelling urine.
Yeah, it would be weird if I enjoyed that.
I don't know. Some people have got that kind of golden shower thing going on.
It would be weird if I enjoyed that from my own father.
Maybe from someone else's.
You go through your piss.
No, I'm gonna stop the recording. Bye bye, people, and I'm really, really sorry about everything.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.